The HOA conspiracy. I'd always pictured my escape from the city as a quiet retreat, a chance to leave behind the backstabbing and power games of my old job. My name's Daniel Harper, folks call me Dan, and I used to work in a high-stakes government office under Victor Langston, a man whose charm hid a ledger full of secrets. I walked away from that world 3 years ago, burned out on the lies and the deals made in smoke-filled rooms. I wanted simplicity, a place to write the truth about what I'd seen without looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. So, in the summer of 2023, I packed up my life and moved to a cozy seaside town called Willow Cove, nestled along the rocky coast of Maine. My new home was a weathered cottage overlooking the Atlantic, its gray shingles blending into the misty horizon. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, a place to finish my book exposing Victor's corruption. But I didn't know then that trouble doesn't just stay buried, it follows you, clipboard in hand, ready to knock your world off its axis. It started with a woman named Evelyn Cross, the president of the Willow Cove Homeowners Association. I'd been in town barely 3 months when she showed up at my doorstep one foggy morning in July. I was sipping coffee on my porch, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and seaweed, when I heard the sharp click of heels on my gravel driveway. Evelyn was a vision of control, hair pulled back tight, navy blazer crisp as a military uniform, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Mr. Harper," she said, her voice clipped and cold. "Your mailbox is 2 inches too close to the curb. It's a violation of community standards." I blinked, coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth, as she pulled out a measuring tape and snapped it across my mailbox with the precision of a sniper lining up a shot. She scribbled something on her clipboard, the pen moving like it was carving my name into a hit list. I laughed it off, thinking she was just an overzealous busybody. I had no idea she was Victor Langston's wife, or that she knew exactly who I was and what I could do to her carefully curated world. I'd ignored the HOA newsletters that kept piling up in my mailbox, all typed in aggressive bold font, demanding attendance at community meetings. But my neighbor, Mrs. Clara Thompson, a kind widow who left blueberry scones on my doorstep every Sunday, gently nudged me to show up. "It's polite to go to at least one, dear," she said, her eyes crinkling with warmth. "Folks here are nice, but they notice when you don't play along." I didn't want to let her down, so I threw on a flannel shirt and jeans and headed to the community center that Thursday evening in August. The room buzzed with about 40 people, their voices overlapping in a hum of small-town concerns whose turn it was to host the clam bake, whether the pier needed new planks, complaints about seagulls snatching picnic leftovers. It felt like a breath of fresh air after years of navigating political minefields. I settled into a folding chair at the back, ready for an hour of harmless boredom, when Evelyn walked in, and the air changed like a storm rolling in off the ocean. The chatter died instantly. Heads turned, conversations cut off mid-sentence, as if everyone was waiting for her permission to breathe. Evelyn Cross didn't just enter a room, she claimed it. Her presence was a force, like the tide pulling everything toward her. She was the HOA president, a role she'd held for a decade, according to the whispers around me. Her tailored suit and sharp smile screamed authority, but when her eyes locked on me, something flickered in her expression. For a split second, her confidence cracked, her face paling beneath her flawless makeup. I knew that look. It was the same one I'd seen on Victor's face when I confronted him about the offshore accounts 3 years ago. She recognized me, and it wasn't a happy reunion. The room felt colder, the tension thick enough to choke on. I gripped my coffee cup, forcing a neutral smile, determined not to let her see me flinch. She recovered fast, I'll give her that, launching into her presentation about dock maintenance and noise ordinances with the same commanding tone Victor used in boardrooms. But her glances kept darting my way, sharp and suspicious, like she was sizing up an enemy. The meeting ended with the usual small talk over stale donuts at the refreshment table. Neighbors made plans for lobster boils and griped about the early frost. I was almost out the door, feeling oddly optimistic about blending into this quiet coastal life, when I caught sight of Evelyn in the parking lot. She sat in her sleek silver SUV, engine idling, headlights cutting through the dusk, staring at me like a predator tracking prey. Our eyes met across the gravel lot, and I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head. She peeled out, tires spitting stones, leaving me with a knot in my gut that told me I'd just stepped into something I wasn't prepared for. I should have seen it coming. Within days, the harassment began, not blatant enough to make her look like the bad guy, but surgical, designed to wear me down. It started with a violation notice slipped under my door on a Tuesday morning, a $300 fine for non-compliant exterior shutters. My cottage's shutters were the same weathered gray as every other house on the block, but somehow mine were aesthetic violations. The notice came with glossy photos, like she'd hired a private investigator to stake out my windows. Then my water heater broke, flooding my basement on a Saturday. I called a local plumber, a gruff guy named Joe who showed up with a toolbox and a can-do attitude. He was halfway through fixing the leak when a kid in an HOA polo shirt banged on my door, barely old enough to shave, waving a clipboard like it was a court order. "Sir, all repairs require a 72-hour permit," he droned, reading from a script. "Cease work immediately or face an injunction." Joe looked at me like I'd lost my mind, his wrench dripping on my floor. "You want me to let your basement drown while I wait for paperwork?" he asked. I tore up the notice, taped it back together later for evidence, and told him to keep going. But the violations kept coming: bird feeders too close to the property line, grass 1 inch too tall, even a fine for my welcome mat, a gift from my cousin, deemed excessively decorative. Evelyn wasn't just nitpicking. She was waging war, using HOA rules as her arsenal. She got creative, too. One citation claimed my porch light was disrupting nocturnal wildlife. Another accused me of unauthorized vegetation because my roses grew unevenly. Each notice came with a fine, a deadline, and a veiled threat of legal action. I started a file, documenting every absurd accusation, feeling like I was building a case against a crime syndicate. Then she dragged my neighbors into it. Clara pulled me aside one afternoon while I checked my mail, her voice low, eyes darting like we were in a spy movie. "That cross woman was asking about you," she whispered. "Wanted to know who visits your house, what hours you keep, if you're hiding something." I told her you're a good man, but she kept pressing. It felt wrong. She mentioned the Garcias, a family who'd left town after 6 months of similar harassment fines, inspections, even rumors about their finances. My stomach churned. This wasn't about rules. It was personal, and Evelyn was playing for keeps. I'd dealt with power-hungry bureaucrats before, but this was different. Evelyn wasn't just enforcing bylaws, she was trying to erase me. I started wondering why. Sure, I knew her husband, Victor, and I had enough dirt to tank his career: bank records, emails, recordings from my time in his office. But she couldn't know that, could she? Or maybe she did. Maybe Victor had warned her I was a loose end, someone who could unravel their empire of favors and kickbacks. The thought kept me up at night, staring at the ceiling while the ocean roared outside, wondering if I'd escaped one snake pit just to stumble into another. Then she crossed a line I couldn't ignore. My phone buzzed one morning while I was wrestling with a chapter about Victor's shell companies. The caller ID showed my editor, Rachel, which was odd. We'd just spoken 2 days earlier. "Dan, we've got a problem," she said, her voice tight with worry. "I got an email this morning claiming you faked documents in your old job. It says you were fired for misconduct and that your book's a pack of lies to smear people who wouldn't promote you." The words hit like a punch to the chest. Every accusation was a fabrication, but they were the kind of lies that could kill a career. "None of it's true," I said, my voice shaking despite myself. "I quit because of Victor's corruption. I have proof for every word in my book. Someone's trying to sabotage me." Rachel's silence told me the damage was done. Doubt had taken root. I hung up, staring at my phone, the same dread from my government days creeping back. Evelyn wasn't just coming for my cottage. She was coming for my future. I knew I couldn't fight this alone. My old colleagues were still neck-deep in government work, too scared or too compromised to help. But one name stood out: Ethan Brooks. We'd worked together in Victor's office before he moved up to become the state's attorney general. Ethan had suspected Victor's schemes from the start, warning me to watch my back when I first noticed the shady deals. He'd told me not to publish, said it could ruin me. But he also said, "If you ever need someone to back you up, you know where to find me." Now, staring at his number on my phone, I realized he wasn't just a friend, was a lifeline with real power. I dialed, heart pounding. "Ethan Brooks, Attorney General's office," he answered, his voice steady but warm. "Ethan, it's Dan Harper. I said, and the pause that followed made me wonder if he'd forgotten me. From Victor's team, years ago. I need your help. I spilled everything: the fines, the harassment, the smear campaign. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, his tone shifted to something sharper, like a blade being unsheathed. Do you still have your evidence on Victor? The records, the recordings? He asked. Because if you're willing to go on the record, we might have something big here. My pulse raced. I've got it all, I said. What's going on? That's when Ethan dropped the bombshell. His office had been investigating Victor Langston for 2 years: money laundering, bribery, the works. They needed a credible witness with solid proof, someone who couldn't be scared off. Evelyn's harassment wasn't just personal. It was her trying to neutralize a threat to her husband's empire. Ethan had a plan, one that made my stomach lurch with both fear and excitement. Let's bait her, he said. I'll come to your place this weekend, officially, as part of our investigation. We'll make sure the neighbors know you're meeting a state official. If Evelyn's as desperate as you say, she won't be able to resist making a move. I agreed before I could talk myself out of it, knowing this was a point of no return. We set the meeting for Saturday at 1 p.m., planning to sit on my porch, coffee in hand, like old friends catching up. We'd let Clara and a few others know about my important visitor, ensuring the gossip would reach Evelyn's ears. Saturday arrived, the sun glinting off the ocean, seagulls circling overhead. Ethan pulled into my driveway in a sleek black sedan, looking every bit the part of a high-powered official in his crisp suit and tie. We sat on my porch, sipping coffee, talking about my evidence: bank transfers, coded emails, a voice memo of Victor bragging about his untouchable network. The air was calm, but I felt like I was sitting on a powder keg. Then we heard Ida car door slamming so hard it echoed like a gunshot. Evelyn's silver SUV screeched into my driveway at a reckless angle, like she'd raced across town to catch us in the act. She didn't knock. The door flew open, slamming against the wall, and she stormed into my living room, clipboard in hand, eyes wild with fury. I have the right to inspect this property under HOA emergency authority, she shouted, her voice shrill enough to rattle the windows. Who is this unauthorized person on community grounds? I demand to know what illegal activity you're conducting. She held up her phone, recording, as if she thought this was her moment of triumph. Outside, I saw curtains twitch, Clara peeking from her window, the Patels stepping onto their porch, phones out, capturing the drama. Evelyn had no idea she'd just walked into a trap. Ethan stood, slow and deliberate, his presence filling the room. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm but cutting. I'm Ethan Brooks, State Attorney General. And you just committed breaking and entering. The color drained from Evelyn's face, her phone slipping from her hand and clattering to the floor. It was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. She stammered, backing toward the door. But she couldn't finish. Ethan was already on his phone, calling his office. This is Attorney General Brooks. I need a unit dispatched for a breaking and entering incident. Suspect is on scene. Clara's camera was still rolling, and I knew this footage would spread faster than a nor'easter. Evelyn tried one last desperate play. This is a misunderstanding, she cried, her voice cracking. I was protecting our community. This man's been causing trouble for months. But Ethan wasn't having it. Mrs. Cross, he said, we've documented 3 months of harassment, intimidation, and now unlawful entry. This isn't about HOA rules, it's about obstruction of justice in a federal investigation into your husband's activities. The mention of Victor hit her like a wave, her knees buckling. He said we were safe, she whispered, but the words sounded hollow, like she knew the truth was catching up. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as neighbors gathered outside, their faces a mix of shock and vindication. Ethan pulled out a thick folder from his briefcase, flipping it open to reveal documents that could bury Victor's career. Your campaign against Mr. Harper just gave us the evidence we needed, he said. You've been trying to silence a witness in a federal corruption case. That's a serious crime. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed, no excuses left. The police arrived, and as they cuffed her, the neighborhood watched, some clapping softly, like a jury delivering a verdict. The fallout was swift and brutal. Clara's video went viral in Willow Cove's social media groups, and neighbors started sharing their own stories of Evelyn's tyranny, fines for kids' bikes left on lawns, threats over holiday decorations. The Wilsons, who'd nearly moved away, recounted how Evelyn had targeted them after they questioned her son's late-night parties. The HOA board crumbled as her allies resigned, their own secrets exposed in the aftermath. Victor Langston was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, his assets seized, his political dynasty reduced to headlines and disgrace. My book hit the bestseller list 4 months later, fueled by the scandal's media frenzy. But the real victory was watching Willow Cove heal. Clara became the new HOA president, running meetings with warmth and muffins instead of fear. Families who'd fled returned, and property values soared as the town became a place people wanted to call home again. New state laws curbed HOA abuses, and Evelyn's case became a cautionary tale in law schools about power and accountability. Sitting on my porch now, the ocean stretching out before me, I'm working on a new book not about Victor, but about how ordinary people can fight back against bullies like Evelyn. I learned something through all this. Tyrants thrive on fear, but they unravel when you stand your ground with proof and allies. Ethan stops by sometimes, and we grill burgers, laugh about the old days, and watch his kids chase crabs on the beach. Last week, his son asked if the ocean had sharks. Only on land, I told him, but we took care of them. I got a letter recently from a woman in Oregon facing her own HOA nightmare. We talked for an hour, and I shared what I'd learned. Document everything, find your people, and let the bully's arrogance be their downfall. She called yesterday to say her board president was voted out. It felt good, like passing the torch. The truth is, peace isn't something you find, it's something you build, sometimes with a fight. Evelyn thought she could crush me, but she picked the wrong guy. The best stories aren't about heroes or villains, they're about regular folks who find the strength to push back. So, I'm curious, have you ever faced a bully like Evelyn, someone who thought they could control everything? What did you do, fight, flee, or something else? And if you knew they were hiding bigger secrets, would you risk exposing them, even if it meant war? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this story hit home, and subscribe if you want more tales of ordinary people taking on the powerful. Stay sharp, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next one.